Hello everybody, my name is Average Election Enjoyer. Today's September 1st of 2025, and I just want to go have a little brief rundown of how the 2026 governor's elections are sort of looking at. We'll be using the website 270 to win, and in this interactive map we can see what are some of the early polls looking like for some of these states. So for this map, the green states are maps that have had early polling here so far in 2025. Dark gray is there will be governor's elections in 2026, but unfortunately there have been no polls yet, and lighter gray means there are no governor elections. I will be starting from left and going to right, and some I will be a little more brief over than others, because if you know California, South Carolina, some of these elections aren't New York, Ohio. Some of these elections aren't expected to be nearly as close as others. However, there still is information to be gleaned from, even if some of these elections aren't expected to be particularly close. So I will be starting with my home state of California. As you can see, in these first, we only have a couple of polls here, and these are very general polls here, very early, lots of candidates, as there's been no primaries yet. Just important information, Katie Porter and Bianca are your first two frontrunners. Bianca, Republican; Porter, Democrat. You can see Republicans are getting about 20 to 25% of the votes here in these early polls. Porter starting off with 10-point leads, 11-point leads here in both of these two polls. Again, this race not expected to be extremely close, but if Republicans can get fairly close in some of these polls, and especially in the election, that could be telling some good fortunes for Republicans in that election night. So again, as even though Republicans not going to be win this race, it's all about the margins here, and the margins are going to be important tellings for how 2026 and beyond might be folding, just like with the special elections and some of these early polls here just being early indicators of what we might be seeing in some of these elections. The next election or the next polls that I'm going to be going over, Arizona governor's race. This is expected to be a fairly close election. As you see here, it's currently ranked by 270 to win as a toss-up for the 2026 governor's race. We can see here in some of these early polls, Hobbs, the Democrat, leading Taylor Robinson by just a few percentage points. This is expected to be a very close race here, sort of a huge election. If Democrats can do well in this race, that would be good tellings for the House of Reps races in the state, and also telling for the future. As you remember, Joe Biden won the state in a huge shock. However, 2024, 5 points for Trump returning to the Republicans, as it's been voting red for a very long time. However, you can still tell these early polls are not even close to definitive. 22%, 20%, 22% voting for others. Republicans yet to crack 40%, Democrats or barely cracking 40%. So and all three of these, sorry, not all three of these first two polls are actually within the margin of error. First poll is not, but first poll was very early. So as we can see, this race is currently within the margin of error and definitely deserves its toss-up rating. So the next race will be for Alaska. This is going to be an interesting race. We only have one poll here, Data for Progress, showing Peltola. So if you guys don't know who Mary Peltola is, she grew to a lot of national prominence inside the Democratic Party when she shockingly won the at-large congressional House of Representatives race. So she was representing Alaska in the House of Representatives for 2 years before losing by only 2 points in 2024. So even though she's a Democrat, Alaska, traditionally Republican state, Mary Peltola has a lot of popularity in the state. So it just, right now, it's unsure if she will be running in the Senate or the governor's race. Whichever race she chooses will surely be very close. If you guys have heard, Chuck Schumer is currently attempting to convince Peltola to run for Senate. However, in a lot of these early governor polls, Peltola does have a strong lead over a lot of her Republican opponents. So if she is to stay in the governor's race, she actually would likely have the advantage in this race versus the Senate. Might be a lot more of a struggle. Republicans definitely have an advantage there. So this will be an interesting race, and we're not really going to know how it's going to go until Peltola makes her decision. So that is Alaska. The next toss-up race that we will be breaking down will be Michigan. As you can see, a lot of early polling here. We have Benson, who's the Democrat, James, Republican, and Duggan, who actually is a independent, former Democrat, switched to be independent to run for this general election. So 35 to 34, 37, 34, 42, 30. Other than this first poll that was, well, this was a long time ago. These are some polls that are somewhat out of date here, as we are in all the way in September. So 3 months old polls here. However, you can see a lot of support with Duggan, which is going to be interesting to see how many supporters he's really pulling away from the Democrats here versus how many independents he might be and more moderate Republicans he might be gaining support from. So it's just this is a race where it'll be really important how sort of the Duggan voters either swing left or swing right after, because it appears right now that none of the candidates are going to crack 50%. 9% other, 13% others. So a solid amount of people here who have their support behind a candidate. People are of course going to be changing their minds, but with a lot of polls, you'll see a high percent of others, especially when it's so early in the race here. So seeing a low count of others really does make these polls seem to have a little bit more credence. Of course, it's way too early to be calling any sort of definitive answer on how this race is going to go. So just important information to know, big third party in the race, which will have a huge impact on the election. Next, we will go to Ohio, where you have Vivek Ramaswamy versus Acton. You can see here, and also, so Democrats currently have to hold their primary. We can see that Ramaswamy cracking 50% in several of these early polls here, with somewhat low others percentile, having a statistical advantage here. So you definitely see Vivek having an advantage here in this election early. Ramaswamy, as you know, he was working a lot with Elon Musk, but he got thrown out of their he got thrown out of Doge there, and there's controversy in how he was removed from Doge. So it's yet to see. As we could see early here, lots of support. Ramaswamy likely to win this election here, so far, at least, barring anything sort of happens. So early lead here for Vivek Ramaswamy, early favorite here in this 2026 Ohio governor election. Next, we will move on to New York, where we have Katie Hochul versus Stefanik here. Early leads, as you can see, especially in this most recent poll. This poll by coefficient out in May 21st of 2025. Recent poll by Siena College has Hochul having a solid 14-point lead over Stefanik, well above margin of error here. However, as is with a lot of these early polls, large other percentile, I broke it down earlier, it's just yet to be seen how these others will really swing in this election. However, 45% to 31%, not even barely cracking 30%, while only 5 points away from 50% here. Large lead for Hochul here. So she has to be the early sort of favorite in this New York governor election. The next state we'll be going over is Massachusetts. This is going to be, another likely Democratic state. Healy having a huge advantage over Keneally here. Healy, I believe, being the incumbent, having that huge incumbent advantage. However, 45% undecided, 44% undecided. Obviously, this election will not end with a majority, with like a ending like this, 25-point romping by the Democratic Party. But Healy currently above. Not above the margin of error, actually, other being above Healy here, but 40 to 15 is, even if it goes 70% to the Republicans, Healy will still win this race. So huge advantage here for Healy in this Massachusetts governor's race, especially because Healy is incumbent, carries with it an advantage in these solid states here. Next race we're going to be going into is the first governor election here in that's going to be in 2025. I made a video on it just a few days ago, talking about the race in New Jersey and also Virginia. So we see here for some of these polls here, as this is going to be a election coming up in just a couple of months, they got some of these polls are going to be a lot more actually important than some of these other early polls you see for these 2026 races. So Cheryl having a large advantage here over Cattarelli in some of these early polls. We have a 51-45 actually has Cheryl cracking 50%. And again, for this Rutgers Eagleton poll, so A2 Insights 51%, Rutgers Eagleton 56%, with Cattarelli only at 35%. With these polls averaged 47, 39, about 8-point lead here. So we have a somewhat large lead here for Cheryl coming into this election. These New Jersey and Virginia elections are going to be watched very closely because they will be indicators for upcoming elections here, especially some of these governor elections in 2026. You can see sort of where the environment will be at with these elections concluding, and a strong showing so far for Democrats in the polls here. 8-point lead for Cheryl with a somewhat large other count for each of these polls. So we'll just have to see how many of these voters will come home for the Democrat, as New Jersey is a traditionally Democrat state, even though it has been shifting right in recent years. We'll see if that sort of shift to the right stops and reverses in this 2025 election. Next state we're going to do is the second governor election in 2025, which is Virginia. Again, we see not as compelling as a lead for the Democrat Spanberger here over Earl Sears. However, you can still see there is a advantage for the for Spanberger here, not cracked 50% in any of these polls. However, 46%, 49% being very close here in this poll from the Virginia Commonwealth U, 43, 46, 39. However, you can see that there is definitively an advantage for Spanberger here. 7 points, 12 points, um, let's see, 17 points about. So as you can see, solid leads here for Spamberger in this race. And again, this will be important race to watch here for national environment, and also just because these governor races are very important in deciding, so, especially in this redistricting war. It'll be very important to see how some of these elections go. So yeah, on to the last polls we have. Some of these early polls here for the 2026 governors elections. We have South Carolina here, and as you can see, well, this is just a there's no real polls here, just for Republican primary, showing actual different people leading. So this is going to be a very close primary. However, South Carolina, ultimately likely a red state to begin with. So as you can see here, we have Georgia, Arizona, Nevada, Wisconsin, Michigan currently rated as toss-ups for the 2025 races. We can see leading, they have New Jersey and Virginia both as leading Democrat here. And also just a couple of other interesting, just one other interesting call out you see. You might not expect Kansas to be quite so close, but they are just like Kentucky, one of two solidly Republican states who has a Democratic governor. So we'll see if the Democrat here is able to continue holding on in Kansas, even though it continues. Kansas actually trending left a little bit recently. There was talks of it becoming a future swing state, just like Kentucky actually. But we'll have to see how Laura Kelly, if she can somehow win this election. That would be a huge win for Democrats here 2026. See how that race is going to go there, and just like in the future, when Kentucky is going to be up for election, we'll see how these Democrats can do in these very red states. Just like, as you can see here, Republicans in Vermont, New Hampshire, both very blue states, both having moderate Republican governors. So we'll have to see with the polarization of the nation how these governors who are elected in states that are not traditional, what they would be voting for, either very red voting blue, very blue voting red. We'll have to see if some of these last remnants of an era of of voting for separate parties on the same ballot, if that will continue. And so that'll be the end of my sort of breakdown of some of the early polls you can see from some of these governor elections. Thank you guys for watching this video, and I wish you guys to have a fantastic rest of your day.